Hello, everyone. My name is always Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow morning. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. If you are joining us live, drop a 1 in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves. And if you're watching the recording, drop a 2 in the comments. My guest for this week is Jean-Claude McMenamin, Managing Director of Friedkin Tanzanian Companies, a travel and hospitality group. Jean-Claude, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Tooways. It's a pleasure to be on. It's lovely to be with you and engage with you and your audience.
Amazing. Let's get straight to it. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And even outside of work, who is Jean-Claude McMenamin?
Tooways, thank you. I think I grew up, I'll start quickly. I grew up in Pretoria, went to school there. So during my school career, I wasn't very studious or academic. And I think, as everyone finishes off school, they all go off in their different directions. And it's not that I didn't have much of a direction, but I enjoyed partying and going out. And a friend of mine's mom said to me I should actually try hospitality. So hospitality sounded quite interesting and not too serious. So I decided to venture off into hospitality. So I stumbled into it. And at the time then, I applied for an internship with Prado Hotels, which is part of the Marriott hotel chain now. And I got accepted into a 4-year internship program. And I started at the President Hotel in Bantry Bay in 1998. So it was quite an interesting start. I didn't really know what to expect. And the first day I got to work, and it was a big hotel. Is still there, and it is a big hotel. And I reported to the food and beverage director, and he was German. And they split us up. I think we were about 40 interns. I think then at the time the President Hotel was also one of the best hotels then in Cape Town. And we got split up, and we got sent to HR, and we got our uniforms, and it's nice shiny new hotel uniform. I got into a white and blue pinstripe waistcoat with a bow tie, so it was quite something different for me as well to kind of get suited up and start. So, and as we got into our uniform and started and reported back to the food and beverage director, I was handed a vacuum cleaner. And so the hotel had two basement levels and 6 floors up, and it was pretty much carpeted all over. And we were told, myself and it was probably about 10 others, and right, so your first job is to vacuum the hotel. So we were like, okay, do we vacuum the passage, or no, the whole hotel? So it was kind of an interesting start. You start watching movies about hotels, and that's not really what you think what it's about. But anyway, so I think over time, as time passed by, a couple of trainees left and interns left, but I kind of grew into the job and grew into the position. And the 4-year internship included 3 years at Wits Hotel School. So I also managed to move around the country. And through that time, I think I grew more passionate about the industry and learned as we went. So that was kind of the start of my career. I think through my career also, just going through the career and finishing up on completion through Wits, I then had the opportunity to move up further in my career. And I think about 2 years after qualification, an opportunity came up to move off over into Nigeria. I took up my first general management role at quite a young age. And I went over to Nigeria. I spent 3 years in Nigeria. And just before I left Nigeria, I was working in Plettenberg Bay. And a lot of my friends that I'd spoken to, they said, are you crazy, or family? Why do you want to leave Plettenberg Bay and move to Nigeria? And, I asked many of them, have you been? And they're like, no. So I said, well, how can you say it's not safe, or, concerns of safety or anything else? So, but anyway, long story short, I boarded a plane and I moved up off to northern Nigeria. So, Nigeria's obviously, it's in some ways, it's kind of split north and south, where the south is the bigger cities are in the south. You've got Lagos and Port Harcourt, some of the larger cities. But I started up in a place called Bauchi, and Bauchi was kind of in the middle of nowhere. And so it was quite an experience there as well. So some of the first early experiences, I got off, and we went into project management. So I opened and managed three hotels from pre-opening phase to development to opening to running a profitable operational organization. But I moved off from Plettenberg Bay and into sort of rural Nigeria, where for the first time in my life I'd seen a generator, and just sort of the experiences and lessons that you learned over time. It really was a good way in and into business. And I think through the company and the group of companies, I then, towards the end of my career, I'd worked for Protea Marriott for 16 years. But I realized at a young age, I think we were quite fortunate that we had really fantastic leaders and leadership within the organization, and there was great mentorship as well. And while I wasn't studious in my younger age, going through the company and through the ranks of the company, I decided to then, if I wanted to move on up and forward, to start with my MBA. And I completed Nigeria. I spent 3 years there. It was a fantastic experience, absolutely amazing. I learned so many things, just from a cultural perspective, from a business perspective, from just any sort of area of business and life that you can think of. It was really a fantastic experience. I then moved on to Malawi, and where I spent almost 4 years in Blantyre, and we did quite a big turnaround project with a very prominent hotel there in Malawi. And from Malawi, I then had a short stint, 2 years in Johannesburg, where I oversaw a hotel called the African Pride Melrose Arch, which was part of the Autograph collection with Marriott. And through the years, I kind of struggled with my MBA. I traveled quite a bit. Marriott it's quite a corporate company, very, very progressive company, but pretty corporate. And I didn't have all that much time to focus on my studies. So I decided to finish up and after a good 16-year career with them, to focus on and get my MBA finished and done. So I took a bit of time off, but I've never been one to be able to sit still for too long. So I had a bit of a gap, and then an opportunity came along to move to Tanzania. And between Zanzibar and Dar es Salaam, and I took up the role of cluster general manager. So I oversaw 2 hotels directly, a small group. It's a group with 5 hotels. So I oversaw 2 directly, and I advised on the other 2 properties. And so I finished off my MBA, and I spent just over 4 years with the company. And then in late 2018, I again had a little bit of time where I'd done 2 usually contracts. If you're working as an expatriate, you'd usually do 2-year contracts, and I'd done 2 years, and then I thought, let me take a little bit of time out. And I subsequently joined after that. I joined our current organization and took over as group managing director, and that's the role that I'm currently occupying. So that's, from a career perspective, that's a little bit of a map and a pathway through from start to my current role and where I am at the moment. I'm currently I'm in Arusha, so I've got offices in Arusha, Dar es Salaam, and in Cape Town, and we've got offices that our reporting structure is up into Houston. So we're part of quite a big group. But so that's a little bit of the career path that I took. Obviously, it's not a straight line path. It wasn't a sprint, but if I look back now, it's a little bit more of a steeplechase race. You get a couple of slips and falls, and you get up and you carry on and you move forward. And so yeah, I think from a career perspective, that's the career trajectory that I took. I know a lot of your other guests are the smarter people, the finance guys, the guys and girls. I've listened to a couple of the other episodes, the CAs and the like. But I think like you say, there's more 2 ways to skin a cat. I worked my way through from an operational perspective, and so
it sounds like a very busy life. Uh, like, what do you even have time outside of work? What do you do outside of work?
There's always time. I think you got to make time. I was actually thinking a night or two ago when I was busy doing my MBA. I used to work and then come home from work at 9 at night, 10 at night, and start studying and submit the assignments. Midnight, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And about 2 nights ago, I got home from work and had a dinner meeting, and I got home and I wanted to do something, just something administratively in the office, and I just thought, you know what, I don't need to do it now. I can do it in the morning, and it just brought me back to my MBA days. And I thought, gee whiz, I actually don't know how I used to manage and sort of time manage. But I think over time, one thing I have learned over time is to try and simplify my life as much as possible. I think also just to outsource all non-core and not to sound cliche, but non-essential tasks, and just I've got the fortunate position. I've got a fantastic team that support me, and I'm able to lean into my team members and help them when needed, and they help out when needed. So I think from a time perspective is really looking at my time and managing my time as productively as I can.
Okay. You touched on it a little bit, but like South Africans, they generally don't like to venture out of South Africa, and the ones that do maybe go to Europe or the US to get an experience. So I mean,
Totally.
you took the road less traveled. You ventured out into the rest of Africa. So what made you decide to, like, I'm going to try something different? Wow. It's for the person at home who's on the fence. Like, what made you decide? I'll try and test out the rest of Africa.
Well, I've always liked traveling, and I've enjoyed different experiences, and going the normal route. Whether you're going to sort of established markets. My take on business and markets in general. Say the old cliche of developed markets and developing markets and first world and third world. I think that's kind of it's really. My take on it is quite different in the sense that I don't think any market is developed per se, because it developed is an end state, and I think every market is in a developing stage and state that they're developing in different cycles. So what made me venture out was then at the time I had some friends and colleagues who'd been to and been in Nigeria, and I always used to hear the stories that came out around the bar and when we went out, and it always sounded like quite a lot of fun. And I like fun and adventure and something that's you're not going to get every day, and that kind of triggered the decision to go. I think the opportunity was also there. At a younger point in my career, I always tried to work harder than there were obviously always smarter people around, but I always had this thing of you won't be the smartest, but you can definitely work the hardest and always stick your hand up when the opportunity comes. So the opportunities came, it was there at the time, and I decided to jump and grab it. So it proved to be, it was the right opportunity at the right time. I think I've also, with that, I've traveled through Africa quite extensively. So I've done by road, by air, as many ways as you can. But and I think with that, it's also, you learn a lot of skills when you spend time on the ground. You learn a lot of new nuances that you don't necessarily pick up in more established markets or more traditional markets. And I think, just from a work perspective and a life perspective, we've had the opportunity to work in more established markets as well, traditional European markets, American markets, things like that. So, but I think Africa is exciting. I love Africa. I'm passionate about our continent. I'm passionate about South Africa. I travel back to SA, quite frequently as well. But the opportunities, I think it's we're on a young continent, and I think people, my perception of the general South African is very much that it's a bit of a blinkered view, in the sense that when I first ventured off and out into Nigeria it's dangerous. What are you going to do there? What do you, and to change those perceptions it's wrong. People should go out there. They should go and venture. Part of what I do is, we're in travel and tourism as well. Part of our group. And I think our continent is absolutely blessed with an abundance of beauty, and just an abundance of choice and just wealth of what there is and what there is to experience. So, it's I think that triggered, not to go off too far, but that triggered my sense of why I decided to go, and then the opportunities just came along, so I just kind of went with it.
Okay. For the audience, please add, if you've got any questions for Jean-Claude, please add your questions to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. We'll answer all the questions towards the end. So let's say I'm a young professional or a professional or a business owner in South Africa. What opportunities are there for South Africans in Tanzania and other countries on the continent?
I think, so our group operates in Tanzania, and we've got offices in Cape Town. So there are many opportunities. I think over time there are a lot of success stories in Africa. There's also stories where companies have burnt their fingers. But I think from an opportunistic perspective, if you look at South Africa, the economy, and just what's going on from a growth perspective economically in South Africa, I think a lot of the skill sets and the established businesses that have footprint or are South African homegrown based, there really are many opportunities within Africa. I think Africa is a very fruitful market. But I think, along with that, the one point that always comes in is when you hear a lot of times you hear the stories of why companies left or they exited the African environment per se. But, I think first and foremost, my advice always is make sure that you understand the rules of the game where you operate. Compliance is key. A lot of times I've seen, companies come in and they try and do the right thing, but they don't understand the environmental context from a legislative perspective, whether it be in employment, whether it be from a taxation point, whether it be from, just various, from a legislative perspective in terms of operation. So from an opportunity point, I mean, just overall, the markets are ripe. They're all to me, it's frontier markets in the sense that they're at a growth rate stage that you are finding in frontier markets. Many of the cities, the established cities, capital cities and secondary cities, and even third-tier developing cities within the continent themselves, they're growing at an astronomical rate, the rate of urbanization. So, just population growth, young populations. I look at our team members in various geographical jurisdictions and just young talent that's there ready to just jump in on board and learn skills and work and that. So I think from just the opportunities are there, I think in many different ways, whether it be finance, investment, whatever, legal, banking. I think the opportunities are really just there. It just depends on what a shareholder and or an investor is looking at, what they're looking for. But yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's a good start. And let's say I'm that professional, that business owner in South Africa, and I'm thinking of exploring other countries. Obviously, you can't jump in head first. What would be your advice? What would be the first steps that you think you must do this first? This is the first thing you do. After that, you take the next step and the next step. What's the first step for them?
I think the lessons that I learned over time is first, do a little bit of in-country homework. So, either engaging, depends on how big your war chest is. But my first point of contact would usually be to go and engage with legal and tax advisors in country. So I think you always get a good sense and a good gauge of what is going on in the country, legally, from a tax perspective, from a compliance perspective, from a risk perspective, and, do your homework and then make your own assessment. So that would always be, I get asked quite often, we're looking at coming into wherever, into Tanzania, we're looking at coming into South Africa. And I think it depends on, what the objectives are, what the investor is aiming to achieve with their investment, but I'm a firm believer in going slowly. I think slow is smooth and smooth is fast. dip your toes in first and understand the playing field, understand where you're going to play, understand the market, the role players, the stakeholders. So yeah, that would be sort of the advice that I'd give off the cuff.
Okay. And switching tracks a little bit. You mentioned your MBA. You mentioned you've also done various leadership courses at Harvard and Oxford and Cornell. How are those experiences, and would you recommend to others to also do that? Is it for a specific person, or is it worth it for everybody to maybe do an MBA, in your opinion?
Well, I think maybe let's start with the MBA. I think first and foremost, it's very taxing. I think firstly, it's not just the actual cost of the MBA. I think it's the cost of time. It's also the economic cost of that time invested. What are the opportunity costs of being able to invest that time into something else? That's the first point. I think any MBA, first and foremost, if it's not accredited, there's 3 global accreditation bodies. If it's not accredited through one or all 3, carrying the triple accreditation, I wouldn't go for it, quite honestly. I think the other underlying factor is, why does somebody want to do it? What are the objectives? From a corporate perspective, I did mine because I realized at the time I wanted to climb the ladder a little bit further. And, with the mentors and leaders that I had through my career, it seemed to be the right thing to do at the right time. Would I do it over? I would, but it was difficult in terms of time, in terms of, the investment that you needed to make into it. But so, yeah, I think that's firstly, understand why you want to do it, before venturing head into it. From the other programs that I've done, I think through my career, the one thing I struggled in school and high school. I couldn't study, and I just couldn't sit still and things like that. But as I gotten further along my career, I started realizing the value of education. And I think, for me now, one thing I've invested in significantly is continuing my education. And, it stood me well, I think, also just overall, to know that you remain relevant. If you look 5 years, if I look at, team members that are 5 years, 10 years younger than I am within my teams, and I see the bright young talent there, and it's, you also want to make sure that you're relevant within the market. You want to make sure that you from an advisory perspective, that you're able to provide relevant, reliable advice that's on point and that's currently going on within the market. So yeah, I think for me, education as I get older and as I grow further and go further in my career as well, it's always been something that I've been very keen on, and I continue to invest in as well. So I think just with that as well, it depends on what you want to, where do you want to go, and I think tailor your academic, background, tailor what you want to do going forward, kind of, move to where you want to move to next. So if you want to take your next step through the later parts of my career, I've started specializing in finance, and coming from real, I was absolutely useless in finance when I was young. When you start talking to all the smart accountants around the table, and at a young stage in my career, and they were talking about balance sheets and cash flow statements and performance ratios, I used to run away and get scared. But, I realized then in my career, I also realized that I needed to, it was an area that I needed to sharpen up on. But I think my advice, and what I always tell my teams and wherever they are, is prepare yourself for the next role, and tailor what you do, what you learn, what you consume, tailor it towards that. I think a lot of times also we say we don't have time, but then look at what you're spending your time on. A lot of people waste time. So I think from an educational perspective, I've always tried to gear myself towards where I want to go to next, what do I want to learn, and where I can add the most value to my teams and to my shareholders as well.
I think that's a great summary. This is one question that I like asking all my guests. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Well, I think if I had to stand back now and give myself advice, I'd probably tell myself not to do most of the things that I did when I was younger, but then I probably wouldn't be where I am today. But I think it's coming back to simplify your life. Look at what you consume, look at what you do, and just eliminate as much noise as possible. I think one thing I've learned as I've gotten older, I would definitely say to myself, read more. I think meditate as well. Something, it's a habit I picked up about 5 years ago, and it's also really helped me to eliminate a lot of noise and just to become a lot more stoic and not emotionless, but to learn to deal with what happens on a day-to-day basis from a logical perspective, as opposed to throwing emotions into it. So I think those would probably be some of the higher level points I would say to my younger self. And I share the same points with my teams, and just to say, look, look at what you want to do, eliminate as much noise as you can, and look forward to the future. So
I think that's great advice from the questions that I wanted to ask. Any last few words from you, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
Well, Uwais, I think just from your side, I'd like to really thank you. I think in this world where everybody has something to say and there is a lot of noise, I think you provide a lot of value, and you've got a great audience. And I think to look at our youth and preparing our youth for the future and a sustainable and thriving future, I would like to thank you, and just to continue to encourage your audience. I think in preparation for our discussion today, I listened to some of the young talent that you've had on the show, and I was like, gee whiz, I'm not anywhere close to these youngsters that you got on the show, but just to continue to encourage them. And the road that you go through in a career, it's not always a straight road, and just to continue on and add value and do the right things for the right reasons. So it's a pleasure to have been with you on the show and to engage with you and your audience. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on the podcast tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that the video has added value to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell so that you get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Jean-Claude, thanks so much for joining, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Wes.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.